faces, a few new ones. As some of you are aware, we did this presentation. Oh, who's seen the presentation that we did last month that we put up online? Oh, is it? Yeah. So that'll give you a bit of a background information. What you're going to get today is a similar thing, but more in depth. And the last presentation I did, we just talked briefly about the constitutional order. However, we're going to do much more about that today, because the constitutional order of the territory and the constitutional order of the realm of New Zealand actually affect all of us. And the constitutional orders were actually put in place for all of us by all our ancestors. Who's of European ancestry? There's something common. And tātai to the whenua, tātai whenua. Cool. See how intermixed we are. So we'll come on to a bit of that later anyway, and what was actually done 180 years ago. But we'll get on to that later. So just to introduce myself a little more fully. Now, some of you may be aware, some years ago, I registered my automobile to myself, drove around it for a great period of time, had it regularly inspected by qualified mechanics so it was safe to be on the road, much to the chagrin of the local constabulary, who kept writing me infringement notices but couldn't ask the questions that we were asking, until in the end I got charged with fraud, which was a maximum of 7 years inside. And anyway, we went through a 2-day jury trial, of which I was acquitted of all charges relating to the matter, which also related to the $4,500 worth of infringement notices that were unlawfully placed upon me. So one of the things in doing that was having the understanding that of how the court system and the judiciary operate, the deception and the fraud they operate in. Who's familiar with the straw man or the free man type things? Right. Yeah, well, we dealt with that during that time because, to put it quite simply, it's crap. If you apply logic to a lot of these ideas, often based on mythology, that are circulating around the place, and you just apply a bit of logic to it, they crumble away. Having the understanding that the universe operates in truth and operates in logic, it's the only way it can operate. So what I did with putting in a proclamation was to give myself a place to stand on the truth of the matter. We saw an amazing change in court with the way we were addressed, the way we were the detail that was attended to us. Bearing in mind that whenever we are operating in court, it is courteously, politely, respect to the office. It doesn't matter if the judge isn't sitting in his office or if he's operating there under deception. We operate to the office. That office is a necessary part of living peacefully and harmoniously together when it is operated correctly. And that structure is already in place in this territory through the Constabulary and the Judiciary. It's just that it's not being operated to order. It's in a massive state of disorder where we have actually people in the Judiciary who do not understand their oath. We have people in the Constabulary who do not even know their oath. I was just looking through the newly posted Code of Conduct for the New Zealand Police. It's online, anybody can go and get it. However, having the look through it that I did, I was quite amazed to see that the first thing that wasn't there was actually the oath of office of the constabulary. Because you think if you're putting up a code of conduct, the first thing is going to as an information for people, is to let you know what their oath is. Their oath of service that they voluntarily took. So anyway, during that court case, what I did was I put in a proclamation. We did a lot of research on claims, and a claim, as many of you know, is generally a dispute. So I thought, well, I'm going to put in a proclamation, because a proclamation is a self-substantiating or a self-evident truth. A proclamation is open to rebuttal. Anybody can step forward and rebut it to an exacting point of law. But until it is rebutted to an exacting point of law, it prevails. So I'm just going to go through with this. Now, this is a bit of an updated version to the one I put into court some years ago. this, along with many others, is going online in the very near future. So this is just my personal one. It's a template. Anybody can use it. As we'll go down, I'll explain a bit further where it comes in, because there's differences depending on where you're standing. For instance, here you see it's all in singular. Here too, on this 28th day of October of the year 2014 AD, and from henceforth be it known that I have the given name as Marcellus Rex. Now those names were given to me by my parents, they're my property. Who else's property could they be? Anybody that uses my name in a manner that is detrimental to me or not, and without my authority, is actually pirating my name. It's my property. Self-substantiated fact, as I say. Who else's property can your name be but yours? It was given to you by your parents. And just to dispel the myth around passports, driver's licenses, government did not create the document. Government did not create your birth certificate. Government did not create the source document. You did, by the very fact you were born. So they stole your name. They applied a bond to your name, and they used that to trade as a financial instrument, and particularly a debt instrument around the world. This is why we get into the situation in court where they want you to admit to being the name, and they say, well, we're operating only on the legal fiction. Yes, but it's my living ass that you want to drag off and put inside. So again, when they talk about operating only on the legal fiction, but actually they're imposing that upon the living soul. Now, that's enslavement, which we'll get onto a little bit in a little bit more detail. So, I have the given names Marcellus Rex, of the family de Pavelly, commonly called Mark Rex Pauly. Mark Rex Pauly is the name upon my birth certificate. Now, Mark, as you'll see, is spelt with a C. That's an abbreviated form of Marcellus, because in the generation that I was born, Marcellus was, as my dad said to me, Mum thought that might be a bit of a girly name, because you were either Bob or Sam or any other monosyllable thing at that time. So Marcellus was my full name, Rex after my uncle. De Pavellys came over with William the Conqueror in 1066 from Normandy over to England to sort out a bit of radu-radu that was going on, which is quite significant also in where we're at today. And that's our old family name from that time. So I'm commonly called Mark Rex Pauly. That's the name on my birth certificate, which is just a documentation stating a fact of the matter. Now, with passports and driver's licenses, the regime may own the document, but you own the information. Because if you hadn't been born, there wouldn't be that information there. So this is where the deception starts to work. Because, again, if by writing your name in capital letters, again, let's apply a little logic. If somebody can write your name in a different format, albeit an uppercase, and that makes you their slave, well, I can see a scramble for the phone directories, because all any of us have got to do then is get a phone directory, capitalise the third letter of the surnames and put an asterisk after it, and all those people are our slaves. That's the same logic. So when we're told that we're a slave because somebody's written our name in all case, with this whole capitalist diminutive maxima, carry on, and you believe that, then you probably are a slave. But you're enslaved by your own belief structures. You're enslaved by the indoctrinated thought forms that have been put on you. Bear in mind that a lot of these things about stepping out of the system that are being put out there are put out by the very regime that is oppressing in order to keep you oppressed, to distract you. So it's most important you start applying logic. So that's all I did. I just applied logic to it. So, a living soul. I'm a living soul. Okay, I'm a living soul inhabiting a vessel. Right? Being of live birth, obviously, because I'm still upright, and sound mind, that could be debatable, do hereby publicly proclaim my absolute natural, ancient, and unalienable right of self-determination. Everyone has that right. It's not a right that's been given to you by some form of authority, if you like, on the physical plane. It's a right given to each of us by the Creator. Whatever form you may think that may take, that's your choice. That's how you exercise your free will. If you have a religious belief, that's absolutely your right to have that. So I acknowledge there's a Creator. And my absolute sovereignty. Now I want to clarify what sovereignty is. Sovereignty is not kings or queens. Sovereignty is not a status. It was corrupted to a status. In its truest sense, it was never meant to be that way. What a sovereign is, or who a sovereign is somebody who has proclaimed their sovereignty. And a sovereign is somebody who makes a commitment to the Creator to live in honour of creation and be of service to humanity. That's what a sovereign is. Okay? I cannot confer sovereignty upon my son. Now he has the right to choose that code, if you like, because that's what sovereignty is. It's a state of being. It's a way of life, a code of conduct, if you like, which over a period of time was corrupted into kings and queens. Now a monarch can be a sovereign and a sovereign can be a monarch, but the two are not the same thing. And because some of my forebears proclaimed their sovereignty, did not automatically make me one. Because it's not a status. It's a code of conduct. So as you see there, absolute sovereignty over my life and property, and thus I stand as sovereign with one subject to my care and guidance. That's what a subject is. A subject is someone who is subject to someone else's care and guidance. So my son, he's 14, he's ready to step in and take the responsibility for his life in its entirety, then he will no longer be subject to my care. And any guidance he may wish is there for the asking. However, he takes on the responsibility, because that's what sovereignty is absolute responsibility. So you could use a proclamation to proclaim your right of self-determination. If you don't want to choose to bind yourself, if you like, to a code of conduct or a code of ethics, that of sovereignty, then you absolutely don't have to. Okay? You may not believe there's a Creator. That's your choice. You still have the right of self-determination. So the reason I use Creator is because it's not to confuse with God. For me, God is a man-made construct, as there are all sorts of names for this entity. However, for me it's a Creator, because all I need to do is look out the window to see that there is a creation. And when I look in the mirror, I see the Creator has a sense of humour. So thus I do, solemnly, in the presence of the Creator, profess, testify and declare with full cognizance of this my deed, that I do make this proclamation in every part thereof in the plain and ordinary sense of the words as they are commonly understood by the native people of the land who was born in this land. Right. So this land has nurtured us, until massive rates of shipping. Literally everything we ate less than probably a generation ago, most of that was actually produced from this land. So each of us carry the resonance of that within us. And we'll get onto that a little bit more later, because it's an important point. Of the native people of the land, in order to express my will, so it is writ. Okay? By the passing of my ancestors, I, Marcellus Rex de Pavelly, am called to assume and fulfil the duties and responsibilities of my inherent sovereignty. The reason it's my inherent sovereignty is because of my forebears. I come from a line of sovereigns. That doesn't mean to say that everybody in my biological line was a sovereign. Sovereignty does not run by blood, by genealogy. Sovereignty runs strictly through individual choice, commitment made. So you end up with sort of like two families. You have your biological line, and then you have your spiritual line, if you like. Probably be the best way to put it. So I felt I was called to assume and fulfill the duties. It didn't mean to say I had to answer the call, but I did. So that makes a pretty, this lets people know and be it in court or wherever, who you are. This cuts through all the rubbish going on about, are you so-and-so? Now, when you put a proclamation in, the judge now says to me, because we've learned a lot since a couple of years ago when we were doing the registration case, you know, are you Mark Rex Pauly? Absolutely, that name is my property. It's what I'm known through, it's what I'm seen through. You know, otherwise it would all be, hey you, and him. So names are handy things. So yes, that name is my property. Now I could also ask him as to what capacity he's using it in. But when I put my proclamation in, my proclamation of self-determination, proclamation of sovereignty, and that my name was my property in court, we watched some amazing things happen, and the whole tone of things changed. Because slavery is a crime against humanity. When one imposes their will upon another, without the authority of the recipient, that's an attempt to enslave. When you have a public or anyone who operates in a deception, which is tantamount to a fraud, that's an attempt to enslave. So when you have judges and constabulary and other public servants operating fraudulently, then they're attempting to enslave you. When anybody you're interacting with does not give you full disclosure on a matter and knowingly keeps information to themselves that's pertinent to, that's an attempt to enslave, because they're not being truthful. They're deceiving you, which is therefore a fraud. Now, because of the situation with the constitutional order of this land, which I'll go into more detail about later, this states not only, again, who I am, but how I stand in this territory, and that I'm doing this of my free will, because I've recognised the sovereignty of other sovereigns. Now, you may have heard the term, only a sovereign can recognise another sovereign. That's because you recognise them by the way they live their lives. So, what this does is detail that I stand with the hapu, which is the structure that was created in 1835 and was internationally recognised, which I'll go into more detail later. We stand to the constitutional order of the land, of the territory, more correctly, to the constitutional order of the territory, and we also acknowledge that there is an international agreement of the parties made in 1840 where a privilege of governance was granted to Victoria from the Congress of Hapu, which came together under the 1835. So I'm going to go into that in more detail a bit later on, but that's there because I realise many of you have actually read it while it's been there. So be it also known that by my live birth, as evidenced by my passport. Why do I use a passport? Because the information on it's mine. Because this is an internationally recognised document. Because this shows that I'm alive. I'm not a dead entity. And it matters not to me if a judiciary or a constabulary look upon me in that way. That's their problem. That's why I use passport. Driver's license, anything with your photo on it and your details on it that's from an official source is proof of your live birth, that you're a living soul. Because as far as I'm aware, they don't take photos of dead people and stick them on passports. Now, what's interesting with this, of course, which I don't know if you can see that well, but I'll see if I can bring it up for you. There's this wording here. The Governor-General in the realm of New Zealand requests in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, all whom it may concern, to allow the holder to pass without delay or hindrance, and in case of need to give all lawful assistance and protection. This is probably one of the best things you can carry with you. Okay? Because the only time that you can lawfully or be stopped is if there's been a breach of the peace. Because that's what the constabulary oath is. And we'll go into the oaths later on. They're there to protect and prevent breaches of the peace. Which, when you think of it, makes very good sense. Yep. So, be it also known as evidenced by my passport, I hereby proclaim I am the creator of any and all documentation in my name, being they birth certificates, bonds, or other instruments, and all expressions in my name in any way, shape, or form, as each of all have been created in my image. They are a reflection of me because they have my name on it. When that refers to me, it's my property, that's using my name. Now, the government may own the document, for instance, like the passport, which is good because they can see that they're not misused. However, the information is mine, or is ours, each of us. Okay? That's why the reflection of you, and thereby the private property, the sole property. It's nobody else's property, of I and I alone. Thus I am the sole owner, the exclusive beneficiary and absolute holder of any and all that is in my name. As such, there is no lawful usufruct, nor claim of right, nor trustee over that which is mine, and any and all contracts entered into, or powers of attorney granted or assumed by me, without free will, full disclosure, given and known by all parties, are fraudulent, and thereby null and void from their inception, and as such, I revoke any and all such. Now, if anybody wants to actually claim otherwise, substantiate your claim. That's the power of the proclamation. Now, I've had people say, yeah, well, they'll just bring a big gun. Well, if you're worried about that, you're in the wrong place. Because if you're living your life in fear of what the outcome of this is going to be, you're probably actually not ready for this. You know, because it's fear that controls most people. Fear is a state of contraction. Most people live their lives in fear, without even being consciously aware they are. How many people, as soon as they see a cop when they're driving down the road, look at their speedo? That's why there were so many crashes last summer when they reduced it to 1k. As I said to one of our peace officers, no wonder you had so many crashes. Everybody's too busy looking at their speedo and fear of going 2k over instead of watching where they're damn well driving. Bizarre, right? So any and all of these presumptions that I'm in contract with somebody or something, I revoke. If anybody has a claim, then substantiate the claim. If it's a financial claim, substantiate your claim, and I'm happy to settle. Right? So be it also known that there is not anyone nor any body, state, group or person that has any authority lawfully granted by me to use my name in any way, shape or form other than for my benefit as determined by I. Nobody else can tell me what's going to be for my benefit. You know, parents found that out when they're trying to make their children eat something they don't like. But it's good for you. Yeah, but it tastes like crap. Okay? Now, if the Justice Department, the Inland Revenue, any of those, the Constabulary, any one of those other revenue collection agencies want to contact me, they can use my name to contact me. That's in my benefit because they might be offering me a service that I would actually like to obtain. So they're using my name to communicate with me, that's fine. What I choose to do with that communication after that, that's my choice. And if it's to write politely on it, no thank you, I have no wish to contract with you at this time. I will call you should I require your services. Anything following after that is an unsolicited communication. So when you get people like Bay Corp, receivables management, EC credit control and all these other, shall we say, perhaps not that legitimate companies constantly calling you, it's unsolicited calls. And it falls under the electronic, I've got the name of the act anyway, but it's in an act of itself. So what I do is I give 3 warnings with that. This is an unsolicited call, this is your first warning. Next one, it's an unsolicited call, this is your second warning. Unsolicited call, in goes. What I do is I don't muck around with the one working at the desk because I find out either who the CEO is or who the Chief Financial Officer is, depending on the institution I'm interacting with, and I write politely to them and explain to them that it seems their staff's knowledge in the legislation by which they are bound, because they're operating from a business that is part of or registered or under the jurisdiction of the Crown, that obviously they're unaware of the required legislation, and perhaps that they should educate their staff, because if I get another unsolicited communication, I will be billing them for my time. So I've just had that situation, because what's happening now is that unsubstantiated debts, when you've written them before and said, well, actually, I don't agree with this, I didn't know this money, or I paid that, which is happening more and more, where people have actually paid a debt from 8-10 years ago, is it's being pulled up and being presented to people again directly through a collection agency saying, you owe $150, you owe $500, you owe $600, you owe thousands, whatever, from such and such and such a time. And of course nobody has actually, very few people actually have records of them ever actually paying that. So again, you have a debt collection agency coming up, they are unsolicited communications and they are bound by the legislation. So we need to educate them, and that's what I see this process as, education. The reason I put a proclamation in the court was to educate them, because they should know that I'm a living soul and I stand in my own right. And if I have caused harm to another, I have the right to put reparation, to restore the harmony between the parties. But when I put my first proclamation in, I put in a big fat schedule of fees on the back. And I've decided since then that I can put a schedule of fees at any time I choose. A crime against humanity cannot have a price. You cannot buy your way out of a crime against humanity. So we decided we wouldn't put schedule of fees on. But just to reinforce to them, therefore I, Marcellus Rex de Pavelly, am slave to no one. Because until somebody can stand up and say how I've become their slave, how can I be slave to anyone? State, substantiate your claim. They're making the claim. The judiciary want to make the claim that I'm their slave and that I have to obey laws made by Parliament, who cannot make law for me. It only becomes law for me when I agree to it. Otherwise, it's enslavement. People think, oh, we're going to have all sorts of chaos because you're not going to have any laws or rules. We've got chaos now. We've got people who don't have adequate housing. We've got children who are going hungry. We've got chaos now. Have a look at what's happening around in our public sector. In my lifetime, I've seen this country go from the third highest quality of living recognised in the world, we don't even rank in the top 20. Why? Why is it getting harder for each coming generation? Because it's meant to be getting easier. Because we do not inherit the land from our forebears, we borrow it from our children. So what legacy are we going to leave our children? One of overt slavery? Because that's where we're headed. You're already thought of as slaves, as someone else's property, by Papal Bull of 1302, where a claim of right was put on all living souls and all property on the earth. What a bloody cheek. You know, who do these people think they are? What's more important is, who do you think you are? Do you know who you are? Do you fully comprehend that the power resides with the people? And through abdicating that responsibility, we have allowed a system of enslavement to be perpetrated upon us. And to rub some salt in the wound, we are paying for it. Paying to be our own slave masters. We're paying the slave masters who are supposed to be the public servants. Now, there's some very good people within the public service. A lot of the groups I see operating around want to just go in and smash the system. No, we don't. We want the system running to order. We want the public servants obeying their oaths of office that they voluntarily took and supposedly received public monies to do a specific job.